So we met in 9th grade. Gosh, we're approaching 60, aren't we? So
No, we're not. Not me.
Lisa's not.
We somehow found each other. I think we were just sort of like those two random misfits that just found one another and clung to each other for dear life.
I mean, I never really felt like I fit in anywhere. And so with Angeli, I do remember thinking like, oh, wow, I think there's this person who actually wants to be my friend.
Everybody deserves to have that one person, to find that one person. No one wants to feel that vulnerable and say, I just want to be liked.
I have struggled my entire life with depression. That has really affected my relationships with people. It's very hard to keep in touch with people. That phone feels like it's 5,000 pounds.
I understood that sometimes if I reached out and I didn't get a response, I knew why. She knew that if she didn't respond, that it would worry me. And when she was able, she would resurface.
That's the secret to friendship, is that somebody knows you at your worst and still doesn't get rid of you.
She won't say it, so I will. Lisa went to Harvard.
We fall down, but we get up.
Welcome back to Hometown Friends, the only podcast that is exploring the foundational friendships from the places we call home. Hometowns are not just geographic locations. They are places of belonging, and they are often where we have developed one of our core identities. The people from these places influence us in significant ways, and this podcast centers the foundational stories about the relationships we made along the way. These are the stories that define our lives. This show is produced by Tribe One, a social health nonprofit dedicated to ending social isolation with initiatives of human connection, and I'm your host, Chandler Hoffman. On today's show, I interview a couple of my high school classmates, Lisa Balabanian and Angeli Rondeve. Their friendship story is one that I think is very important as it highlights many significant aspects of what are the ingredients of friendship and how they are maintained over time. We cover place attachment and issues related to cultural identity. Both women discuss not fitting in to the popular crowd during adolescence and how this shaped their lives and their friendship. We discuss that vulnerability is both challenging but an integral part of having authentic relationships, and specifically how depression and anxiety can affect the motivation to stay connected. We see that effort, patience, and loyalty is what makes friendships lifelines. Please enjoy this conversation, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with others. Lisa and Angeli, welcome to the Hometown Friends podcast. So super happy to have you guys on. I want to say a little bit about knowing you from high school, and then I want to get into your friendship because I know it's been an over 40-year friendship. Lisa, you and I did musical theater together. You were the star of the show, and I was in the background sort of admiring you, seeing your incredible voice and your acting ability. And Angeli, you and I go back to second grade together in Miss Fish Leader's class, LeConte Elementary in Berkeley, California. And boy, have I admired you throughout the years. One of the smartest people I've known, friendliest person, and the fittest. So I want to get into all of that too. So again, welcome to the Hometown Friends podcast. So glad you guys agreed to come on. Let's get into your friendship a little bit. Maybe you guys can introduce yourselves and then move on to how you met.
Leak.
You want to start?
No,
You want me to
you
start? All
start.
right, I'll start. Well, I'm Angeli, and I grew up in Berkeley with these wonderful people. I actually was born in India. My parents met at UC Berkeley. My father was Indian, and he came over in the early 60s to go to grad school at Cal. And my mom came from New York to go to grad school, and they met and got married and moved back to India for my dad's job prospects. And I was actually born there, and things didn't pan out for him as well as he had hoped career-wise. So in 1970, when I was 2, they moved back to Berkeley. And so I don't have any memories of those first 2 years in India, but I'm told that that's where I spent the first 2 years of my life. And they moved back to Berkeley. And in 71, they moved from an apartment to the house where my mother still lives. So the home that I grew up in on South Side. If you're an outsider, we're not the Socs, we were the Gracers. Lisa was the Soc. But not born, but raised in Berkeley. And for anyone else who is from there or has spent time there, I consider my upbringing there and my parents instilling in me the foundation of who I am now. Especially, I think it's been even more eye-opening lately with what is going on in the world. And I have lived in many other places besides Berkeley. I currently live in Arizona, but I lived in Washington, D.C. metro area for over 20 years. I lived in South Dakota for 8 years. I find that those connections to people who share our upbringing is critical for my mental health right now, and to use sort of as a sounding board and a verification that what's going on in the world in general is not normal for what we believe, and that there are people in addition to myself that still hold those values, because that is being challenged right now. Yeah, especially where definitely. I am right now. I'm in I guess it's a purple state. It was red when I moved here. It's now purple, but it still can be very challenging. So, I was raised by basically hippie parents, and, who met in Berkeley in the 60s. And that foundation, follows me all over the country and, well into my, we're approaching 60, aren't we? So
no, we're not. Not me.
Lisa's not. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point, Anjali, is just the representation and where people are from, I think really does often represent who they are at a core. You're from Berkeley, and you still sort of have many of the same values and beliefs and behaviors that you were raised to have. And that makes a lot of sense. Lisa, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Okay, I'm Lisa Balabanian Chan. I noticed you still spell my name without that A. Balbanian. Damn. So many people from growing up in Berkeley still call me Lisa Balbanian. It's okay. But a lot of people, you did. Yeah. It's okay. I saw that on the email. I was like, oh, that's so cute. Anyway, Balabanian is an Armenian name. And I was born actually in San Francisco. My father was from a very small town in Washington State and the son of immigrants. And he wanted to get as far away from there as possible. So he ended up in the Bay Area and decided to raise a family in Berkeley, which I will always be grateful to him for that. My mom actually was actually born in India, by the way. But she grew up in England and then came over to, America when she met my dad. And so I grew up in Berkeley. I feel exactly the same way as Anjali about, how grateful I am to, it is growing up in Berkeley is the core of who I am as a human being in terms of my values. I ended up, going back east for college and realized the grass is not greener and couldn't wait to get back to California. And I spent 2.5 years in the Bay Area before I moved to LA. I thought I knew what I wanted to do and none of it worked out. And so I ended up being called to LA actually by a couple of hometown friends that I want to give a shout out to. One is Mark Mendoza. Mark and Mike Rainey. I actually lived with them for 3 weeks when I first moved to LA. So I moved to LA in October of 93 and I'm still here 32 years later, which is insane. One of my best friends who lived in San Francisco died. And I was like, life is so short and I really think I want to go back to acting class. And so I went to acting class and then that sort of started me on my journey to trying to be an actor. I tried to do that for many years. I feel like LA is a city of sort of searching, sometimes lost souls. And I was definitely that. And to some extent, still am. I mean, LA is really where I met my inner circle of friends, other than, Leek. I found, because that was another question that you asked about, where did you meet your closest friends? And honestly, I met them all pretty much here. For me, being literally geographically close to people is has sort of dictated in a way my close friendships. And part of that has to do with the fact that I have struggled my entire life with depression and anxiety, but that has really affected my relationships with people. It's very hard to keep in touch with people when you're not sort of on a day to day or week to week with them. And, just to pick up the phone and be like, hi, I just wanted to say hi and tell you how depressed I've been. And, like what people, that phone feels like it's 5,000 pounds. So
Wow.
that has really affected, that is really, I would say, one of the main reasons why I just have let so many relationships from Berkeley go. And it makes me really sad. But, Angeli has always understood, she's always like, even when I won't, return her text, or I won't, I don't keep in touch with her. She's the one who always checks in on me. And, she's the reason why our friendship is still so amazing. I give her most of the
Wow.
credit because, she's stood by me through my struggles,
Beautiful.
and
It does take effort. It takes someone to make effort. If it's not both people, it takes one person. So you're shouting her out, which is beautiful. Angeli, maybe you want to talk about how you guys actually met and what it has been like 40 years of
Yeah.
friendship with this person.
So we met in ninth grade when everybody went to West Campus. And we were talking about this actually, trying to remember like what drew us together and where did that bond start? And I think, and Lisa can, speak for herself, but I know I didn't really know that many people. For the 3 years before that, I was in a private school with literally like 14 kids in my class. That was it. And I did not feel like I was part of anything. I wasn't part of any group, any clique. I was sort of a misfit, an outcast, a nerd. By professionally, I am now a forensic scientist and attorney. And back then I was just a nerd. I didn't go to parties. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I studied and I danced. And I didn't do sports. And so we somehow found each other. And again, Lisa can speak for herself, but I think we were just sort of like those two random misfits that just found one another and clung to each other for dear life and created this foundation that just grew as the years went by.
Everybody deserves to have that one person, to find that one person. And it's beautiful to hear that you found each other. And I can hear the emotion in both of your voices about, how incredibly important this friendship is. Lisa, you want to say what it felt like to meet Angelique back then?
It's interesting. Like you, as a child, you're not really conscious of these things, but like looking back, I can see that like Angeli and I mean, we're both these ethnic, if you will, sort of, good students, sort of not really feeling like we fit in to these cliques of people. I was certainly not part of the popular crowd, beautiful people crowd. I wasn't even really, I never really felt like I fit in anywhere. And so with Angeli and then our other friend, who I'd met actually before Angeli, I'd met our friend Chrissy Colstead. who sadly lost her life in 1999. I can't believe it's been so long, but
Mm.
she was sort of I had been dumped basically by my best friend growing up, and that happened in eighth grade, and it was extremely traumatic for me because it happened over the course of the school year, where it was like this person basically, decided I wasn't cool enough, I wasn't this enough, I wasn't that enough, and sort of just, dumped me. And I was, very fragile. And then I went to, I met Chrissy, and then I went to West Campus and met Angeli and some other people. And then that's when I also started doing performing arts. I got involved in Bay Area youth theater. So I met a bunch of people through that. I think one of the things that always connected us was just our sense of humor. And that's something that connects me with all of my closest friends. Our senses of humor align, you know, we make
Mm.
each other laugh. We
Yeah.
find so much joy in laughing, and I feel like, again, I don't remember details, but I do remember thinking like, oh wow, i I think there's this person who actually like wants to be my friend, and after
Isn't
having
that
been
beautiful? Yeah.
devastated, really, and
Yeah. Yeah.
by the person I thought would be my lifelong friend, it was sort of like, okay, you'll accept me, you like me, and that was
Totally.
it.
Totally. Aren't we all yearning for that? I mean, we truly are just yearning for people to pay us attention and like us. And no one wants to feel that vulnerable and say, I just want to be liked and I want you to like me for who I am. But I mean, there's love songs essentially written about it. Essentially, it's like what we're all yearning for. And I think you guys are speaking to it very simply. Now I'm curious of how that all happened. Like, how do you stay friends through the different iterations of your life? Were you friends throughout sort of Berkeley High, and then how did you keep in touch? You're giving a lot of credit for Angelique for making efforts, but I think it likely there's a reason for that. So I'm curious about it.
Well, and it did. I mean, it did to a point come and go. But I mean, so back then, for if there's any kids watching, we didn't have cell phones. There was no internet. So I mean, to stay in touch with people, you had to plan and like make phone calls or write letters or like buy plane tickets. And so she won't say it, so I will. Lisa went to Harvard. I remember we came home the Christmas of freshman year, and the one thing, I mean, we obviously came home to see our families because it was the first time we'd been away from our parents and our siblings and Berkeley. But we made it a point, however short time we were back in Berkeley, to get together. It was Lisa and I and Chrissy Kolstead and then a fourth friend, Tammy Springsteen. And the four of us met at Cafe Roma on Bancroft and, spent an evening just catching up on, we had been off on our own for 3 months and starting to make new friends and new relationships, and coming back there and plugging back into that connection was home.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can describe it. It was like,
Yeah.
it's like you were doing all this exploratory stuff and trying to find your way in the world and figuring out what you were going to do with your life. And then you could just come back and kind of, like Whitney Houston, exhale, like you were with your people. There was no pretense. There was no, we caught up and we talked about our lives, but it was just, we could just sit there and say nothing. And it was just that feeling of like, these are my people.
There's a complete acceptance when you're really good friends with people. I think especially who you've grown up with, and to you guys' point, and maybe Lisa specifically, the reason why children make friends with each other or young people is because essentially they see each other every day in school.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you go to school, you basically see each other every day. And if you choose to be friends in that, you can always find that friend in school. This is how people make friends. They see each other often. And I think that's one of the distinguishing features of the friendships we make early on is that it's proximity to each other, right? We see each other all the time, and then we form these relationships, and we laugh with each other, and we hang out with each other. And hopefully you get a relationship like yours, which doesn't have a lot of judgment, which is accepting, which is loving, which is we belong with each other. There's not pretense. We can actually be all of ourselves. And of course, I hope that even that grows over time, because and I do think that that happens when you keep these childhood friendships. You can actually have sometimes better relationships over time because it's so long lasting. Let's just face it, the longer you live, the more fucking shit you're going to go through, and the more shit people are going to witness you go through, and then you're really going to show who's a friend. And I'm curious if you guys can speak to going through stuff and having friends, but specifically each other, through those iterations of yourselves, maybe some stories that you have.
I have a 19-year-old. I never had children, but I have a 19-year-old stepdaughter, and I've been in her life since she was 4. And she has met a handful of my longtime friends, Lisa being one of them. We stayed with Lisa several years ago. My husband and I and my stepdaughter stayed with Lisa so that my husband and I could go to a concert, and Lisa stayed with my stepdaughter. And my stepdaughter just absolutely fell in love with her. And, to this day, still asks about her. And she asked me one time, how are you still friends with these people that you met, in high school? This was when she was like maybe 14 or 15. She's like, I can't keep friends for a couple years. And I said to her, it takes effort. It takes work. It doesn't just happen. I mean, yes, I've known her for this long, but the fact that we are still, hey, can I come bring like people you don't know and stay at your house and leave my child with you while, my husband and I go see Eminem and Rihanna? Because these are people who will do anything for you because of that effort. And I said that to her because we used to have her over the summers. She lived with her mother during the school year, and she would come to us over the summers. And every year she had friends in South Dakota where we were living, and she'd go back to San Francisco for the year. And then she'd come back to us for the summer and just expect these girls to accept her back in to their group. And I would ask her, did you text them at all over the school year? Did you call them at all? Did you send them emails? Well, no. Well, they've all been together all year. To your point, you covet what you see every day. That's a quote from my all-time favorite movie, Silence of the Lambs. But they've been together all year. They didn't miss you. Yes, they like you, but in order for them to want to spend time with you, you have to put some effort in. And that took a couple years for her to, I think, really realize that was true. And part of it was witnessing me putting effort into maintaining my close girlfriend relationships. We have had time periods where we have not been in as close touch. And as Lisa said, I mean, part of it has been she wasn't able to be responsive, and, being very open with one another and knowing what our struggles were. I mean, I've been in, I was married. I'm in my second marriage. I was married a previous time for a long time, and she's been with me through that entire relationship. I understood that sometimes if I reached out and I didn't get a response, I knew why. She knew that if she didn't respond, that it would worry me. And when she was able, she would resurface. And then we would make an effort to, hey, we haven't spoken in 6 months. Let's not let it go that long again. And then we would go through, longer periods where we were checking in much more frequently and trying to make an effort to see one another, at least, once a year. And now that she's always been in LA, but now that I'm in Phoenix, we're a lot closer. So we're able to see each other more often. And
I also admire that you make such an effort to keep in touch with people and to keep connections with people. And I, again, give you the credit for keeping our relationship, because we did, there were long periods of time where we weren't really in touch. Like after, you got, I think, your first marriage, I really hardly saw you or talked to you during that time. Our lives were really different. And I mean, that also speaks to something that I think, I think about all the time, which is that, a lot of people who do the traditional get married, have kids, raise kids. You were being this incredibly productive person who was, you know, yes, you didn't have your own children, but you did have the responsibility of a stepdaughter, and it didn't matter because you still made the effort. You still made the effort to keep connected to me.
Thanks for being so vulnerable, both of you. The effort that you're talking about is vulnerability. It's actually putting yourself out there to say, I love you. I care about you. I want to be your friend. I want you to remember me. I want to share my life with you. It's not actually that easy to do that. So, to your point of giving advice to your young person, people, the effort is not just the action. It's not just have you texted them. It's actually putting yourself in a place where you could feel or get rejected. Someone could ghost you. Someone, in this day and age, they could just not text you back, which feels like shit, right? And people are going through it all the time. And by the way, I think it's a ingredients to the loneliness and isolation epidemic that we have. That's just one of the ingredients. I think, Lisa, you're bringing up another, which is that when we're anxious and we're depressed, we actually don't feel like we want to reach out to anybody because it's just too much effort, or we are worried that we're not going to be our best selves. Or I don't know, can you speak to this a little bit of like what kind of effort it takes to not just do something, but to feel something that would allow us to keep these friendships going?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for myself on that, but most of the time it's just I don't want people to have to hear my suffering, pain, because they're going to feel like helpless and want to try and do something about it. So I'd rather just them not know about it, and also sometimes I don't even like to hear myself speak and talk about it. Things have happened where I just don't want to worry people, and I don't want to have to try and pretend and be on. I don't want to make the other person feel bad and helpless that they can't say or do the right thing. I mean, Angeli's always been, and she's told me this many times. She was like, all you have to do is say the word, and if you need me, I will be there. And knowing that, and I have some other people that I feel that way about, but like knowing that, just makes me love her more and appreciate her more. And I know that she would, and she's a busy person, but I know that she would drop whatever she was doing to make sure I was okay.
I think you're certainly not alone. Most people don't want to share. We often in our society, hey man, how are you? Or hey, how are you? You want to be able to say, I'm great. But if it's not great, then it's hard to actually say what's really going on. And if you are feeling so low, or there's actual problems. Now, the secret, of course, right, is that when you go to those places, the friendship actually, there's something much more meaningful about the friendship than just keeping it on a surface level. And again, I think that's one of the secrets to the long-term friendships that you're giving advice about, Angelique, to these young people, is actually like, it's not going to be good all the time. And it's not going to be, that's not what a friendship is. A long-term, any relationship, but a long-term friendship with anybody is going to be hard. You're going to have conflict. You're going to have times when it's not good, when the other person is not good. And that's the time to show up for somebody, right? That's the time that really shows what a friendship is all about. That's the secret to friendship, is that somebody knows you at your worst and still doesn't get rid of you.
Those few people upon whom you know that you can rely are your lifeline. Everything you said, Lise, like, not wanting to burden people, not wanting them to feel helpless, not wanting to share the vulnerability, you also know that you're not going to be judged. You know, I mean, and we all have acquaintances, right? And friends that, maybe like are, great to go out and have a drink with, and, but you would never trust them with your innermost vulnerable problems and struggles, because either they might judge you or they might think less than of you, or, they wouldn't have anything constructive or supportive to offer. But just, it's like we've been through the fire together for so many decades. Like there's nothing she could say that would surprise me. And there were a few. She dropped a few bombs, but there's nothing she can say that would shake me. Maybe surprise me, but not shake me, and never, no judgment about anything.
So there's a loyalty there too. That loyalty is very important in friendship and with all relationships. Now, loyalty can go both ways. If it's a toxic situation, if someone is not good for you, loyalty might actually be antithetical to the friendship. You don't actually want to stick around somebody who is toxic, bringing you down, constantly criticizing, whatever the toxicity is, not good for you. We all can have those people in our lives. To be able to have one person to be able to say that to is a lifeline, is a critical piece between people killing themselves and people not killing themselves. What advice would you give around these issues to either young people or to other people who are struggling about friendship? Because I do think we are facing people who don't have a lot of friends and don't have people to actually be vulnerable with.
People feel like they're so connected and can, because of social media, but I think it's I feel very frightened actually for kids growing up now, and it's just different. It's just a different world. So I don't, I mean, I've heard of actually now 2 cases of young people actually ending their lives because they were on Chat GPT or on an AI and got advice from that to, when they were dealing with their mental crises. It is really important, I think, even more now, to find those people who are able to just be and show up and listen.
Many people don't feel like they belong in high school. Many people, most people, I would say. There's just a few, I think. And if you do, you're lucky, right? You have a sense of belonging. But this is the critical aspect of people's psychology.
We're all still forging new relationships, right? Even at our advanced age. So, I mean, I was telling Lisa earlier that right now, since I've been in Arizona, I've been here for 5 years. My husband chose not to move here because he hates the hot weather. So I'm married, but my husband lives in Ohio. I live here. He comes here for the 3 months of the year when it's not 1,000 degrees. But, we see each other. We still see each other in between. But I sort of have this weird life where I'm married and I have a partner, but half the time I'm single. And so I still make like new friends, ladies at the gym that take my class, that I kind of, when I can parse out that maybe they share my political views and my fundamental views, because there's a lot of people here who don't. But those are all fledgling relationships. With Lisa, I don't have to do that because she already knows. Like the foundation was set in the 80s, but we've kept it up, and we even if we go for a while without being in touch, when we get back in touch, we sort of fill in that gap, and then we move forward. And we still, like she said, even now, 40 years later, we're still watching the same stupid movie, and because it just makes us laugh. It makes us happy. I mean, for 90 minutes, me and her sitting on the couch watching this stupid movie was like the highlight of the year.
No matter what, it doesn't have to be a lot of people, but knowing you have one person in your life that you can connect with is critical to survival, and it's critical to a life worth living. And all the research is actually even more clear now that the happiest people are the most socially connected, and they have people they can turn to, and they have people in their daily life that they can have conversations with, whether it's over the phone or going on vacation and seeing them every couple of times a year, or being on a podcast, I hope, and actually having conversations with people that are meaningful, that are real, that aren't just fluff, that aren't just surface, that are actually about what's really going on in our lives. And I think a lot of kids these days just don't talk. They just move on and they don't tell. I guess it's hard. We are not taught to tell people why we're moving on. We just move on, or we just ghost them, or we avoid them. When I started this podcast, you shared it with the group about reaching out to somebody just like this and hearing their story. Can you tell that story?
So I had a friend before high school. I had a friend in elementary school. And when we were in, I think, fourth grade, her family moved from Berkeley to Pleasanton, which is about an hour away. Our mothers drove us back and forth, like, a couple times a year to stay with each other for like a weekend so that we could still we talked on the phone all the time, but we couldn't see each other. And so we got to, maintain this friendship. And then we didn't go to high school together. And I went back east to go to college, and I just lost touch with her. And when social media came out, I looked for her a lot. Like, I tried to find her on all these different platforms, never found her, could never find anyone who, a couple people remembered her. And like, she was in some of our like school, the school photographs. And I would always ask, does anybody know where she is? Anybody heard of, where she ended up? I knew she had gone to college in Arizona, but then I didn't know if she ever came back or what. And one of our classmates said, oh, I know her. She's in Oregon or something, or she got married and this is now her last name. I reached out to her on Instagram and I said, don't know if you remember me. We were friends in like first grade. And it took her about a week, and she wrote me back and she was like, of course I remember you. And so we had a Zoom call that lasted about 2 hours, and we just caught up on 50 years of our lives and are now I haven't seen her, and, we don't speak frequently, but we're now connected through social media, and we comment on each other's things. And now, I'm sort of caught up on the 50 years of all of her siblings and what happened to them, and, both of our mothers, and, she stayed with my family, I stayed with hers. And so it was just a really amazing experience that even if they didn't know how much of an imprint they had on our lives, but also, when I reached out to her, there was that fear of maybe she won't remember me, or maybe she'll remember me, but want nothing to do with me and, won't answer me. And so when we got to have that Zoom and see one another and talk to each other, it was the most amazing feeling of, just like all those memories came back, and stuff that we remember. That time we went and we got this flavor of ice cream, and your brother said, and just, we both remembered stuff from like 50 years ago.
We take it for granted when we're little kids. But the truth is once we go older, we realize that shit ain't free. Like, people don't just pay you attention anymore. Beauty fades, everything, you don't get a chance to see everybody every day. It's not a given. It's actually very important to have people in your life. And when those people are still around and they say, I love you, I care about you, that's something to really be thankful for and in gratitude for. And I also believe that there's this idea that we can reach back, look at our lives and say, these people didn't have to do those things for us, but they did. And there's gratitude in that. And I think a gratitude practice is, it's well researched in happiness, well-being production, to ameliorate these issues of social isolation and loneliness, is to actually be in gratitude for the people that pay us attention and come over and buy us ice cream and sit on the couch with us and watch 16 Candles for us. So I really appreciate you guys showing up. And just to mention, Lisa, just one more, you and I sang, I mentioned this in the beginning of the podcast, but we sang in a group and we sang at our graduation. And then 40 years later, one of our friends, Carmen Traylor, who's a singing voice teacher, brought us all together at her studio, and we sang the same song again. And it was like we had never left each other. None of us had talked to each other in 40 years. Not once had I talked to any of those people, but being back in that room and singing that song and putting it on social media, YouTube, and just seeing you and singing with you again, it was like, it really was something that was profound to me. And I wondered if you could comment on it. as well, because it seemed like it uplifted all of us.
I had seen some of those people at reunions, but yeah, I hadn't really, kept in touch with anybody. So I was, of course, extremely nervous about it. And, when I walked in and you walked in and Brian came in and Leon and Carmen was already there, it was like, I just I felt safe. Like, even though I was about to do something that I didn't really want to do because I didn't really want to sing. And, that original performance of ours, as I mentioned at the time, was still like the gift that keeps on giving of embarrassment of me dancing to my own little beat and everybody being like, you guys are moving one way and I'm moving the other way. And then me thinking I was like, I don't know, Whitney Houston at the end, but I just, I was so happy to be with you guys and we had so much fun. And then I was so glad that we were going to get to see each other again to do the actual recording. Once we did that last year, I actually felt very comfortable thinking, these are my friends.
Yeah.
These are my
That's
friends
beautiful.
from high school.
I love that. And I think we are loved by people that we don't actually know. And I think we do love people that we don't actually give, a sense that I think there's more love there than we even admit to ourselves sometimes. So I think that's a great example of it. I really appreciate the fact that you guys were willing and wanting to come on, share your stories, share your friendship, share your appreciation of each other, your admiration of each other is super clear. And any last words, any admirations, takeaways, appreciations?
You doing this podcast, Chan, like since you started it, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, how long is he going to be able to keep that up for? And is anybody going to actually watch? And I do. And I know that other people do. And I commend you for coming up with it. I'm proud to call you my friend from second grade.
Likewise.
And somebody's going to have to find that picture from Miss Fishley's class. But, I'm honored to be one of your guests on the podcast. I think it's amazing.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of Hometown Friends. What I truly love about this project is that I learn more and more about what makes friendships and relationships so meaningful in each episode. And of course, it gives me an opportunity to research the many aspects and observations that I have about what makes good friendships work. The part of this interview that I really want to talk more about today is the effort that Angeli was discussing with her stepdaughter. Sustaining friendships is not just about reaching out or keeping in touch with people, although this is pretty important. Being vulnerable with our friends is the investment that we need to make to deepen and continue to have friends over our lifetime and keep them close, because it fosters trust and authentic connection. Through the courageous act of reciprocal self-disclosure, sharing one's true self is what transforms relationships from superficial to intimate, because it signifies commitment to being seen and accepted. This process is well supported by the social penetration theory, which highlights how gradual, reciprocal vulnerability leads to relational depth. The gradual part is the key to the feelings of connections, and hometown friends are uniquely situated to provide this opportunity to us, because they're often created in our youth or adolescence and can over time provide this type of opportunity to share your authentic self. This means both sharing the pain and the difficulties of life, but also sharing the accomplishments and the uplifting parts. Good friends celebrate you when you're up and are there for you when you're down. Research consistently demonstrates that the quality of deep connections often outweighs the quantity of acquaintances, and show that having even one close, reciprocal friendship provides significant protection against loneliness and psychological distress, even more so than being a part of the popular crowd. On the flip side, other research finds that the lack of friendship was linked to significant feelings of loneliness and mental health difficulties, even when family support was present. So if you have even one friend that has been there for the ups and the downs of your life, take the time to let them know how much their friendship has meant to you. Even if you don't feel like you have one of these friends, make a commitment to become that type of friend to someone else. As Mahatma Gandhi so famously was quoted to have said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world by being a good friend to yourself and to someone else." Let us know what you thought of our show by rating it and leaving us a comment. And please stay tuned and stay connected.
We fall down, but we get up.